The origin of Fidi came about because there was a real need in the marketplace to identify an area that was rich in culture, residential, commercial, and retail tenants, as well as a lot of civic projects that are going on. And nobody really knew how to identify that specific area. The area itself is one of the oldest areas in New York City, being the first area that was founded in New York, and the first real inhabitants were located there. And yet, in today's modern world, if somebody was located in that area and said, "Please meet me," they didn't have a name for it, and nobody really understood how quite to define the financial district, as it was a little bit known at the beginning. So when somebody said, "Meet me downtown," the definition of downtown was really so vast and large that nobody really understood where they were going. Some people associated downtown at 34th Street, some people associated downtown at 23rd Street, others associated at Canal Street. But the financial district itself was never really defined where people can clearly identify that as a location. And the name financial district wasn't being used at all. So you have this area which is very rich and very wonderful in culture and population and uses without any form of identification, which is really quite extraordinary. So I came up originally with the name Fidi, which is an acronym from the financial district, to be able to give the area itself a proper identification, and where people can then begin to at least understand where they were describing when they were living, working, or going out in that particular area. And if you look at the history of New York, acronyms have been a leading part of identifying places to live and work. SoHo, which stands for South of Houston Street; Tribeca, which is Triangle below Canal Street, and other areas have been clearly identified with an acronym and give a sense of identification of a specific area. So I originated and coined the term Fidi to give some definition and identification to, I think, one of the most extraordinary areas in New York City. And that area really is bounded by, let's say, south of the City Hall area, or south of Chambers Street, and really going into Broadway and east of Broadway, and then bounded by the two areas of the water. South, we get the Hudson River and East River meeting, and then east on the East River side. And this area itself is one of the most extraordinary areas in New York City. It is the fastest growing residential population. About 8-9 years ago, the population consisted of about 10,000 people. Today, the area boasts over 60,000 people. It is one of the largest commercial districts in all of the New York, in the United States. As you grow into that lower Manhattan area, it has over 100 million square feet of office space. The largest commercial district is Midtown Manhattan, followed by Chicago. And then, depending on how one calculates and counts the square footage in Washington, D.C., that would be third or fourth to the lower Manhattan commercial district. The area boasts, Fidi boasts, the highest tourist traffic count in population, second to Times Square. It has the highest education rate per zip code per capita in all of the United States. It has the most wealth per capita per zip code by daytime than anywhere in the United States. And for a period of time, which has just recently changed, it had the highest income per capita per zip code by nighttime as well. Now I think it's second or third in the United States. Mountain View, California, I think has the highest income per zip code per capita in the evening time. So here we have an area that had the highest education rate, had the highest income production both by day and night. It also has more railroad track per square foot than anywhere else in the United States. had the third or fourth, depending on how you count it, office population in terms of square footage than anywhere in the United States. It's the fastest growing residential community in the United States, and certainly New York City. It has more schools being built in that area than anywhere else in New York City. And you could go on with all of the things that one can describe in the area, and yet there was no name for the specific area. People just said downtown, which was such a wide area of description that nobody could even tell you when they were going into the financial district. Hence, there was a real strong need to come up with a name to give it a brand identification so people could understand when they're speaking about an area that has so much strength that it at least would have some identification. And then we came up with the name Fidi. And that name now seems to have really taken hold. The residents of the area are calling it Fidi. The commercial tenants are calling it Fidi. There are firms now that have called themselves Fidi Residential, and it has seemed to really take hold, as it should, because the area is so strong. The other thing that, one of the extraordinary things about the area is its diversity in use. Residential is there, as I mentioned. Commercial use is there, as I mentioned. But the civic is also there. We've got an enormous amount of organizations, both culturally and civically, that are located. There are 3 Smithsonian Institute affiliates that are there. There is a number of other museums that are located within the area. 8 or 9 museums specifically are there, from the Sports Museum to the Museum of American Finance, to the Indian Museum, to the Police Museum, and on and on. And that is one of the other unique qualities about the area, is that it has such a rich diversification of use. There are very few areas in New York, certainly, but in the United States, even on a larger extent, that carry the richness of uses in one area. Most of the time, things are either residential or commercial, or they have civic and cultural interspersed. But rarely does one have an area that has a vast and thriving and growing residential population, a vast and thriving commercial population, and a civic and cultural population. And now, overlaid on top of that, is a very, very strong, rich retail population. The retail stores that have located in Fidi are truly unique, from Tumi to Maison du Chocolat to BMW to Hermes to Tiffany to Canali to New Religion Jeans, and more, Borders Books, etc. The area has become a real focal point for retail shopping. And you know, it took a long while, but the retail tenants finally recognized what was there. The island of Manhattan, being surrounded by water, is an area in which people need to get to and from very easily. And I think one of the strongest pieces of benefits, I guess, of the Fidi area is its transportation network. So you've got a very vast transportation network, which now lets people arrive to and travel within the Fidi community on a very, very easy basis. Hence, retail would like to locate there. Then you've got a very strong office population, on top of which you've got now the fastest growing residential population in New York, and all very, very wealthy. So it has now really become the new Madison Avenue of New York City. There is only one Tiffany and Hermes in all of New York City, except now you have a second, which is in the Fidi area. So I think it is certainly growing and finally coming to its own. The other thing that I think is extraordinary for the area is its transportation redevelopment. It always had, as I said, the highest amount of railroad track of anywhere in the world, frankly. There's more railroad track per square foot than anywhere else in the world. But the delivery system, the stations themselves, were lacking. Now you have 4 brand new transportation hubs that have either been completed or in the process of being completed, which is going to revolutionize the way people travel to and from and within the financial district marketplace. And that consists of the new Broadway Fulton Transit Center in the heart of Fidi, where every single subway will connect to in one place, never before in New York City's history. Then that is also underground, physically connected to the new Calatrava PATH station, which will carry people both from Subway and the Port Authority of New York, the PATH, to and from New Jersey. Also, there'll be a 1-seat ride directly to Newark Liberty Airport, directly from Manhattan at the PATH station. Never before could you get to an airport from a 1-seat ride. Now you'll be able to. Secondly, the Broadway Fulton Street station will have a 1-seat ride ultimately to John F. Kennedy Airport. So here, New York has gone without any direct connections through public transportation to an airport, and we'll have 2 direct connections to 2 of the 3 large airports in the New York City area. Also, the Battery Park Ferry Terminal has been completed, which is the 3rd major transportation hub, and the 4th major transportation hub that also has been completed is Staten Island Ferry Terminal, located on Whitehall Street. So now the big problem that existed in people's minds, which was the delivery system of the transportation, is not only going to be rectified, but we will have 4 of the largest, most extraordinary and modern transportation hubs directly in the lower Manhattan area and in Fidi. So that, I think, bodes extraordinarily well for the community.